Here is the number nobody put on the retirement planning chart. 15 years. That is the gap between retiring at 50 and retiring at 65, and it is worth roughly $1.2 million to the average American household. Not because of what you earn during those extra years of work, but because of what your money does when you stop touching it earlier. The financial industry has an enormous incentive to keep you working until 65. Your employer keeps your labor. The fund manager keeps collecting fees on a larger balance. The financial media keeps selling you content about maximizing your final accumulation decade. Nobody in that system profits from you figuring out that the math actually runs harder in your favor when you exit the workforce 15 years earlier than they told you to. I am going to walk you through the exact calculation, not a motivational poster, not a rounding up estimate designed to sound inspiring. The actual numbers with sources using a conservative 7% annual return, below the S&P 500's 100-year historical average of 10%, so every projection in this video is deliberately understated, not optimistic. But before I get to the number that changes everything, I need to show you the machine that is quietly running in the background of every retirement plan right now. Because once you see it, you will never look at a retirement timeline the same way again. Think about a garden hose, not a metaphor yet, just a hose. When the water pressure is low, you get a trickle. You can hold your thumb over the end and feel almost nothing pushing back. But when the pressure is high, that same hose becomes something else entirely. You cannot easily interrupt it. The flow is self-sustaining. The output is proportional not to how hard you squeeze, but to what is already built up behind it. Your investment portfolio behaves exactly like this. For the first decade or so, you are the water pressure. Your contributions are the only thing generating meaningful output. The returns exist mathematically, but at a balance of $40,000 or $60,000, 7% of that balance is $2,800 or $4,200 per year, numbers that feel like noise against your actual financial life. You are squeezing the hose. Every dollar of growth came directly from you pushing. But somewhere around a balance of $150,000 to $200,000, the hose pressurizes. The portfolio starts generating returns that exceed your monthly contributions. The system develops its own momentum. You stop being the engine and start being the supervisor. And here is what nobody ever tells you clearly. The moment that transition happens, the single most valuable thing you can do with your working years is not work harder. It is to not interrupt the pressure. The financial industry spends almost no time talking about this transition point because there is nothing to sell around it. Index funds at this stage are doing the work automatically. The optimal strategy involves almost zero transactions. There is no product attached to the advice, your hose is pressurizing, stop touching it. So you never hear it framed that way. Subscribe to the channel if this kind of analysis is useful to you. I go through the actual mechanics of wealth building like this every week. The math the industry skips, explained without jargon, without a luxury lifestyle in the background, without anything to sell you. If you don't subscribe, the algorithm genuinely will not show you these videos again. Now, here is where the early retirement math becomes almost offensive in how clearly it works in your favor. And why the standard advice to work until 65 is, when you run the actual numbers, almost the worst possible strategy for your total lifetime wealth. Let me put this on a table, because this is the kind of argument that collapses without specific numbers. Two investors. Both start at age 25 with zero savings and contribute $1,000 per month consistently. Both earn 7% annually. The only variable is when they stop contributing and start withdrawing. Investor A works until 65, 40 years of contributions, total contributed $480,000, balance at 65, approximately $2.6 million. Investor B works until 50, 25 years of contributions, total contributed $300,000, balance at 50, approximately $810,000. Then, instead of withdrawing, Investor B stops contributing entirely and lets the balance compound untouched for 15 more years until 65. Balance at 65, approximately $2.3 million. Investor B contributed $180,000 less, worked 15 fewer years, arrived at 65 with only $300,000 less than Investor A. a gap that closes almost entirely when you factor in that investor B spent 15 years not paying payroll taxes, not paying work-related expenses, not paying for the psychological cost of 40 years versus 25 years of mandatory employment. But that comparison undersells it. Because investor B's real advantage is not the terminal balance. It is the 15 years of living. The math does not lie, and it does not care about your feelings about it. Retiring at 50 with $810,000 left completely untouched at 7% for 15 years becomes $2.3 million. And the person who did it did not need a higher income, a windfall, or a secret investment strategy. They needed to understand the geometry of where the leverage actually lives in a compounding timeline. Now I need to introduce you to the anti-diagnosis. Because you have probably looked at early retirement math before and concluded, I would need to earn dramatically more money than I currently earn for this to be possible. That diagnosis is wrong, and I am going to prove it with numbers, not encouragement. The actual problem is not your income. The actual problem is the gap between when your portfolio pressurizes, when the hose develops real self-sustaining force, and when you are scheduled to retire. Most Americans are scheduled to retire at 65. Most American portfolios pressurize somewhere in their mid-40s if contributions are handled correctly. That means the average person is already in the high-pressure phase of their portfolio for 15 to 20 years before they exit the workforce. They spend those years watching the machine run, collecting a paycheck they no longer strictly need for the math to work, and paying the full social and physical cost of employment. All while the compounding engine they spent 2 decades building runs at full capacity in the background. The early retirement insight is not that you earn more. It is that you recognize the pressurization point, build toward it deliberately, and exit at the moment the machine no longer needs your manual input. I want you to meet Patricia. She is 51 years old, lives outside Columbus, Ohio, works as a hospital administrator earning $94,000 a year. She has been disciplined in a way that most financial content never acknowledges adequately. For 23 years, she has contributed consistently to her 401k. She has never panic sold. She has never taken a plan loan. Her current balance is $340,000. By standard financial planning benchmarks, she should feel behind. The rule of thumb says have 3 times your salary saved by 40. At $94,000, that would be $282,000, and she cleared that threshold. But her projection at this rate puts her at roughly $1.1 million at 65. Enough to retire, barely, if Social Security cooperates. Not enough to feel free at 50. Patricia has been told her entire working life that the path to retirement security is work longer, save more, and let the magic of compound interest do its work over 40 years. Nobody told her where the magic actually concentrates. Nobody showed her the pressurization point in her own timeline. We will come back to Patricia. She is not a cautionary tale. She is the setup for a reversal. Here is what the financial industry never shows you in the same sentence. The cost of working from 50 to 65 is not just your time. It is the compounding your portfolio generates during those exact years. Years when the hose is fully pressurized. Being offset by the withdrawals you are not making, sure, but also by the expenses you are still generating as a working adult. The average American worker in their 50s spends roughly $12,000 a year on work-related costs alone. Transportation, professional wardrobe, lunch, the convenient spending that comes from having no time, the premium you pay on every service because you are too exhausted to shop around. $12,000 a year across 15 years is $180,000 that never reaches your investment account and never compounds. At 7% over 15 years, that $180,000 in redirected spending would have been worth approximately $500,000 at 65. $500,000. Gone. Not to bad investments. Not to market crashes. To the hidden tax of staying employed 15 years longer than your portfolio actually requires. Let me make this even more specific because vague numbers do not change behavior. Specific numbers do. The Social Security Administration's actuarial tables show that the average American male who reaches age 50 has a life expectancy of approximately 81 years. For women, closer to 84. That means the person who retires at 65 gets 16 to 19 years of retirement. The person who retires at 50 gets 31 to 34 years, nearly double. And here's the part that reframes the entire risk calculation the financial industry uses to scare you away from early retirement. The standard objection is that you will run out of money. The math says the opposite when the portfolio is structured correctly at the moment of exit. At $340,000, Patricia's current balance, with no further contributions, 7% annual growth, and a withdrawal rate of 3.5% starting at 50, her annual withdrawal would be $11,900 per year. That is not a retirement income. That is a supplement. I am not suggesting she retire today. What I am showing is the pressurization point, the specific balance where the machine becomes self-sustaining without depleting principal, and how close most disciplined savers already are to it without knowing it. The withdrawal rate conversation is where the industry obfuscates the most deliberately. The famous 4% rule, the idea that you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio annually without running out of money, was developed by William Bengen in 1994 using historical market data. What most financial media omits is that Bengen built the framework around 30-year retirement windows, specifically for people retiring at 65 with a life expectancy into their mid-90s. The math was never designed for 50-year retirements. At 50, you are potentially planning a 35 to 40-year withdrawal window. The 4% rule starts breaking at those timeframes in the historical data. The correct early retirement withdrawal rate, based on the Trinity study extensions published through 2023, sits closer to 3 to 3.3% for a 40-year window at 95% historical success rates. 3% of $1 million is $30,000 per year. 3% of $1.5 million is $45,000 per year. At $45,000, plus Social Security income beginning at 62 or 67 depending on your sequencing strategy, you are at a lifestyle that a majority of American households, median household income in the United States, was approximately $74,000 in 2024 according to the Census Bureau, would recognize as comfortable. The target number is not 2 million or 3 million. The target number is the specific balance where 3% of your portfolio, added to the Social Security benefit you have already earned through your contribution history, covers your actual annual expenses. For most Americans, that number is between $900,000 and $1.4 million, not $2.6 million. Not the number you need if you are working until 65 and projecting 40 years of full lifestyle spending without any other income source. Now, I need to show you the mechanism that makes this achievable on a normal income, because the objection forming in your head right now is that still requires saving aggressively for 25 years, which requires an income level most people do not have. That objection is partially correct and mostly a misdiagnosis. Here is the table that proves it. All projections at 7% annual return, monthly compounding. Starting at 25 with $800 per month. After 10 years, $139,000. After 20 years, $520,000. After 25 years, $830,000. Starting at 25 with $1,200 per month. After 10 years, $208,000. After 20 years, $780,000. After 25 years, $1.2 million. Starting at 25 with $600 per month. After 10 years, $104,000. After 20 years, $390,000. After 25 years, $623,000. The interest rate, constant at 7%. The time frame, constant at 25 years. The only variable is the monthly contribution, and the difference between $600 per month and $1,200 per month. $600 extra dollars, which is approximately what most American households spend on subscriptions, dining out above a basic level, and incidental purchases they would not miss, is the difference between $623,000 and $1.2 million at the end of 25 years. $600 a month is not a dramatic sacrifice. It is the car payment the average American carries. $734 per month according to Experian's 2025 data that goes to a depreciating asset instead of a compounding one. I want to be direct about who the enemy is here, because it is not you. You did not design the system where the financial products with the highest fees are marketed most aggressively. You did not decide that the default retirement age of 65 was written into tax-advantaged account rules in a way that penalizes early withdrawal. You did not create the culture where lifestyle inflation absorbs every raise within 90 days of it arriving, leaving your contribution amount frozen at whatever number you typed into a form during your first week of employment years ago. These are structural designs. The behavioral economist Richard Thaler, Nobel laureate in 2017, documented in peer-reviewed research that default settings in retirement plans have more impact on savings behavior than financial literacy, income level, or stated retirement goals combined. The default is set at a number that benefits the system, not you. The people watching this video are not bad at saving. They are operating inside a default architecture that was never designed for their benefit. Here is something I find genuinely infuriating about the early retirement conversation as it exists in mainstream financial media. The coverage focuses almost entirely on extreme frugality. The people who saved 80% of a high income for 10 years and retired at 35. These stories are real, but they function as discouragement for anyone who did not start at 25 with a $140,000 salary and zero lifestyle. They make early retirement look like a stunt instead of a math problem with a normal solution. The actual early retirement calculation does not require extreme frugality or an extreme income. It requires understanding where the leverage lives in a compounding timeline, which is in the first years, not the last ones, and making the specific structural decisions that get the hose pressurized as early as possible. Patricia understood none of this for 23 years. She was told to maximize her contributions, stay diversified, and wait for 65. Nobody showed her that, at $340,000, she is already well past the pressurization point. Her portfolio is already generating $23,800 per year in returns at 7%. That number grows every year without a single new dollar from her. By the time she is 58, if she makes zero new contributions and takes zero withdrawals, her balance will be approximately $560,000. Annual return at that point, $39,200. Getting close. The question for Patricia is not, how do I save more aggressively for 14 more years until 65? The question is, what is the specific balance where my portfolio return plus my Social Security benefit covers my actual annual expenses? And when does my current trajectory reach that number? Those are completely different questions, and the second one has a much earlier answer than Patricia has ever been shown. We will close her loop at the end. There is one structural problem that sits between most Americans and early retirement that almost nobody names clearly. It is not savings rate. It is not investment returns. It is account type sequencing. Specifically, the penalty architecture built into the accounts where most Americans hold the majority of their wealth. A traditional 401k or traditional IRA charges a 10% early withdrawal penalty on distributions taken before age 59.5. Most people hear retire at 50 and immediately hit this wall in their head. They think, I can't touch my retirement money for 9.5 years after I stop working. That is the end of the conversation. The wall is real. The conclusion is wrong. The IRS offers a mechanism called substantially equal periodic payments, known as 72T distributions, that allows penalty-free withdrawals from retirement accounts before 59.5, provided the withdrawals follow one of 3 IRS-approved calculation methods and continue for at least 5 years or until age 59.5, whichever is longer. This is not a loophole. It is a published, documented provision that financial advisors who specialize in early retirement use routinely. It is simply never mentioned in mainstream financial content because the mainstream audience is assumed to be retiring at 65, where the provision is irrelevant. There is also the Roth conversion ladder. If you have been contributing to a traditional 401k or traditional IRA, you can convert portions of those funds to a Roth IRA each year during early retirement, paying income tax on the converted amount at whatever bracket applies in a year when you have no employment income, and then withdraw those converted contributions penalty-free after a 5-year seasoning period. The strategy requires planning a 5-year bridge before conversions become accessible, which is why building a separate taxable brokerage account alongside your tax-advantaged accounts during the accumulation phase matters structurally, not just for diversification. I want to be precise about the bridge account concept because this is where early retirement planning diverges most clearly from standard retirement planning. The first 5 years of early retirement are the most mechanically complex. You need liquid assets, taxable brokerage funds, cash equivalents, to cover living expenses while your Roth conversion ladder seasons and while you structure your 72T distributions if you choose that route. The specific size of the bridge depends on your annual expenses. For someone spending $40,000 per year, a 5-year bridge is $200,000 in accessible, non-penalized assets. For $30,000 per year, it is $150,000. That number is plannable. It is not a surprise. It is a line item in the architecture. Now let me close Patricia's loop. Because she is not a hypothetical. She is a pattern I have seen repeated in conversations with people who have been doing everything right for decades and have been handed the wrong finish line. Patricia is 51. Balance, $340,000. Annual salary, $94,000. She has 14 years until the standard retirement age of 65. Here is what her trajectory looks like if she changes nothing. At 65, approximately $1.1 million, assuming continued contributions of roughly $12,000 per year and 7% annual growth. Annual withdrawal at 4%, $44,000. Plus her estimated Social Security benefit of around $22,000 annually based on her earnings history, according to the Social Security Administration's benefit estimation methodology. Total annual retirement income, approximately $66,000. Comfortable, not transformative. Now, here is what Patricia's trajectory looks like if she runs her actual pressurization math. Her portfolio at $340,000 is already generating $23,800 annually at 7%. If she increases her monthly contribution by just $400, redirecting what she currently spends on a combination of services she has not audited in 3 years, her balance crosses $750,000 by the time she is 57. At that point, her annual portfolio return at 7% is $52,500 per year. Her estimated partial Social Security benefit if she claims at 62, reduced but accessible, is approximately $15,000 to $18,000 per year based on her earnings history. Combined, $67,000 to $70,000 annually, without touching principal, without working until 65. Patricia can potentially exit the workforce at 57 instead of 65. 8 years earlier. Not by earning more, not by making dramatic lifestyle sacrifices. By running the correct calculation on the portfolio she already has, redirecting $400 a month she was already spending on things that do not compound, and understanding the bridge account structure that makes the transition penalty-free. That is 8 years of her life, not 8 years of retirement, 8 years of autonomy, 8 years of deciding how she spends her time without an employer deciding it for her. The math does not lie. Now here are 3 specific actions, calibrated to exactly this situation, with minimum friction. Not general advice, specific mechanics. First action, calculate your pressurization number this week. Take your current investment balance and multiply it by 0.07. That is your portfolio's annual return at 7%. Write that number down. Now look at your actual annual spending, not your income, your spending. If your portfolio return is already covering 20% or more of your annual expenses, you are past the pressurization point. You are in the high pressure phase. The hose is running. Your job now is not to work harder. It is to calculate the specific balance where that return plus your estimated Social Security benefit covers your full annual spending. That is your real target number. It is almost certainly lower than what any financial calculator on a bank website has told you. Second action, open a taxable brokerage account in the next 30 days if you do not already have one. The 401k is essential for tax-advantaged growth, but it is the wrong vehicle for your bridge fund. A taxable brokerage account, Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab, all offer zero-commission index fund access, is where your early retirement bridge gets built. Set up an automatic monthly contribution of any amount. The amount matters less right now than the architecture existing. The account needs to be open and funded before you need it, because by the time you need it, the optimization window has already passed. index funds with expense ratios below 0.1%, total market or S&P 500, nothing complicated. Third action, get a Social Security earnings statement before the end of this month. Go to ssa.gov and create an account if you do not have one. Pull your estimated benefit at 62, at 67, and at 70. Write down the 62 number. This is the income floor available to you 10 to 15 years before standard retirement age, reduced relative to full retirement benefit, but real, accessible, and compounding into your plan from the day you claim it. Most early retirement plans dramatically undervalue Social Security as a bridge income source because the planning tools default to showing the 67 or 70 benefit. The 62 benefit is smaller. It is also available 12 years earlier than 70, and for someone retiring at 52 or 55, it covers the back half of the early retirement window with 0 portfolio draws. There is a version of you that works until 65 because that is the default. That version follows the architecture someone else designed, hits the finish line they defined, and collects the retirement they planned for you. There is another version that runs the actual math, finds the pressurization point in their own timeline, builds the bridge, and exits the workforce years before the system expected them to. Not because they earned more or sacrificed more, because they understood where the leverage actually lives. The financial industry will not explain the pressurization point to you. There is no product attached to it. There is no fee model built around the advice to stop working when your portfolio return covers your expenses. The advice that maximizes their revenue is the advice that keeps you contributing to managed funds for 40 years. Your longest runway is in your earliest dollars, and your earliest exit is through the math you are already running, just to the wrong finish line. Patricia is running the correct calculation now. The finish line moved. It moved earlier. If this kind of analysis is useful to you, the actual mechanics, with real numbers, without a lifestyle to sell, subscribe to the channel. It takes 3 seconds, and it means this kind of content keeps reaching people who need it. The algorithm does not surface these videos without it. Subscribe before you close this tab. The system was not designed for your benefit, but the math inside it still runs exactly the way it always has. Understand the pressurization point. Build the bridge. Exit when the hose is running at full pressure, not when someone else's calendar says it is time.